the Solar System, Part 3. Ho now, aliens, we've come to the conclusion that the Solar System must be a composite of some sort. Almost all the facts, not to mention the Book of Genesis, point to it being a combination of components. And if you read Genesis chapter 1, not all these components were visible to an observer standing upon the surface of the earth in their present form until well on in geologic history.
Genesis chapter 1 is written as through the eyes of someone standing on the earth, isn't it? The sun, for example, did not exist until a human being standing on the earth could see it. It might have been there, but unless the human eye could see it, it did not rate a mention in the biblical account.
The same applies to stars. In biblical terminology, a star is a small light in the sky. So, meteorites, which are small objects which glow because they are heated in the Earth's atmosphere, would rank as stars in the Bible. The sun, on the other hand, is almost the opposite of the star, because when it shines in full strength, it causes them to disappear.
So, therefore, for example, the New Testament, where Christ says that in a time approaching his final return, the stars shall fall, we might assume that at some future time there will be some sort of perhaps an optical phenomenon, perhaps implicating the Earth's atmosphere and environs, perhaps something like an intense meteor shower. But what we have is the appearance that the stars are falling, not necessarily that the universe is collapsing.
For 100 years or more, astronomers have been assuring the world that the solar system condensed from some sort of nebulous body. Not that dissimilar in shape to what we imagine a flying saucer to be.
Perhaps that's why people keep seeing flying saucers, and people tend to see what they assume must exist.
You cucumbers seen any flying saucers lately? Hey, have you actually seen those hairy itchy grubs following each other across a road?
No.
They get end to end in line, like a train following a locomotive. They just keep following each other.
Like cucumbers, end to end?
You hope that the leader knows where he's going.
Human beings can be like that. Scientists can get bad doses of itchy, hairy grubitis.
And follow the leader nowhere for year after year?
Well, during the Middle Ages, some branches of science actually went blindly backwards and fell behind the level attained by the ancient Greeks.
Follow the cucumber in front.
And don't think outside your green cucumber form constraints, so to speak.
Which brings us back to that rotating vegetable patch, namely the solar system.
Even the sun is tilted at an angle to the plane of the system, scarcely indicative of condensation from the same nebulous disk.
And there are major obvious differences between the composition of the melons, the planets.
Laplace, of course, didn't know that back in his times.
Is there any difficulty in blending the system together as a composite?
What would happen if you got 2 or say 3 gyroscopically stable fast-spinning disks of planets to collide?
Could be some broken melons. Some could end up looking like cucumbers.
Yes, well, some of those asteroids do resemble cucumbers. It all depends how you do it. The point is, it can be done. Coalescence from a single nebulous body does not appear to explain the facts.
Then why has science been selling spongy, outdated green vegetables for so long?
Hairy itchy grubitis.
Well, that's nothing. Try the origins of our own moon.
The silvery.
The loon.
Ye light in ye night sky, nothing less. Historically, there were 3 major theories of lunar origin: co-formation with the Earth, capture, and sloughing off the Earth. Now, apart from capture, the others do not match or meet the requirements of the chemistry or of the structure of the planets. So what do modern scientists do? They throw out the one possibility, which is capture, difficult though it may be, and then go on a wild goose chase.
The chemistry of the Earth and Moon is different, you say?
It is different. but there are sufficient similarities to require some sort of a common genesis or source for parts of the Earth and perhaps all of the Moon.
Which can be explained by postulating a common donor planet, which was at least partly broken up to supply parts of the Earth and part or all of the Moon.
Nothing complicated in that, is there? Yet, modern scientists have ignored the capture theory of lunar origin as though it does not exist.
Perhaps they ignore the capture theory because it might have actually happened in space and in time.
And things that happen in space and time tend to disturb some theorists.
The airy-fairy never-never of Dreamtime Land is fundamental to certain religious philosophies and ideological worldviews. Real science has to do with real measurements in a real world where real events take place. That can be disturbing.
And real science relentlessly reveals the truth without fear and or without favour.
Without fear or favour. Without fear or favour.
With a motto like that, science must be a takeover target for every ideology and bandwagon that comes along.
From the miserable and sometimes murdering mendicant friars of the Middle Ages through to today's over-the-top greenies, that's the over-the-top ones, the sort of criminal element, yes, science is a takeover target for every bandwagon.
Usually supported by the poor old misinformed public.
All in line like itchy grubs.
With someone claiming scientific credibility leading them along at the front. People do tend to trust science, and so they should. Therefore, there is a great responsibility upon scientists. Now, moon origin is a classic. It's patently obvious how the moon got here. The public spent billions of dollars on it. Apollo was a very well-run project that caught everyone's attention. The astronauts and the engineers got it right, but the people who interpreted the data have been walking about on the ceiling. It's as though they are afraid to disclose the facts.
And now we have another line of itchy grubs, who are way out of line, making crazy claims such as Apollo is a fraud, and Apollo is a sinister pagan deity and all the rest.
Apollo? Well, Apollos was a hero of Christian religion.
Yes, just like many of the astronauts and the engineers who ran the Apollo project. They were very good men. Tell us, cucumbers, what is it that strikes you as most remarkable when you think about the silvery Laloon?
It's silvery all over.
It actually tends to go yellowish or golden after a while.
As it waxes and wanes, it keeps disappearing and coming back.
It is almost like the sun come back some nights with its fire out. I read somewhere that to an observer on the Earth, the moon is exactly the same size as the sun.
And people who have much to do with breeding animals know that an animal reproductive cycles tend to synchronise with the moon.
A Laloon, she is rather significant. It has to be a she, doesn't she? And the sun has to be a male. Exactly the same size, the one, just like the other, come back at night with the fire put out, synchronising with female reproduction.
The moon is certainly not straightforward.
According to the common donor theory, the Earth captured the moon in the early Cambrian era, and immediately complex life exploded onto the scene.
Well, they actually captured it at the beginning of the Cambrian era. But the question of the moon is definitely not straightforward. No wonder scientists who are under orders to make blind chance the creator, in effect God, are walking about on the ceiling and can't accommodate a Laloon.
Talking about the gods and the moon, isn't Allah the moon god? Don't Muslims have the crescent moon for their symbol?
This world is full of fakes and frauds. Well, how about Hail Mary, the Mother of God? Personally, I'd prefer Thor and Loki, the Norse gods.
But there is a tie, religious or otherwise, between the moon and the female.
There is an obvious tie between the moon and female reproduction.
And you say complex or animal-grade life exploded onto the scene following the arrival of the moon.
And we happen to explode onto the scene at the one time in geological history when the moon, viewed from the Earth, happens to be exactly the same diameter as the sun.
Yes, and the moon, of course, has no light of its own, even though it is an excellent all-over reflector. As you have said, Zucchini, in a sense, the moon and the sun are equal in diameter, yet the moon only exists as a light because it reflects the sun's light.
Even a cucumber can see that this is saying that men and women, when all superficiality is stripped away, weigh the same in spiritual balance. The core being of a female is equal to that of a male in the sight of God.
Even a zucchini can see that this is also telling us that the male and female, although ultimately they are equal, they are not the same, and the male has precedence and power beyond the female.
Yes, well, this is a great mystery. Quoting St. Paul, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and they shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery. From the book of Ephesians.
So we see marriage portrayed in the heavens before us every day.
Hey, are the sun and moon ever unfaithful to each other?
Now, one can push these analogies, types and similitudes a little far, but there is something else here. The moon is the bride is the church, the elect people of God. Israel is the elect people of God. The moon and the sun are, in a sense, equal. Therefore, God and Israel, in a sense, are one and the same. A reading from the book of Micah, chapter 5, verse 2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. God took on human flesh. This is a great mystery.
No wonder science can't handle the moon.
And no wonder counterfeit, anti-Christ movements trumpet themselves as being the goods in the Messiah, whilst pursuing the annihilation of Israel, a Christian church, democracy, and ultimately science itself.
Yes, the sun and moon, though, aren't about to give up and go somewhere else. And whilst we see the sun and the moon in the skies, we know that God's purposes stand. The God who made the heavens and the earth, he is Lord supreme, and his word stands. The ordinances of the heavens are unshakable, and the purposes of God will be worked out.